What's up, Fano?
This is the worst part of podcasting, man.
All of it? The whole podcasting process?
Who came up with this idea? I think, getting it started.
Yeah.
And figuring out, all right, there's kind of shit, but then it starts to get good, but then you don't have the context of the part that gets good.
Bebop.
Why don't we just start by cheering?
Cheers.
Cheers.
Na zdrowie.
Salud.
We did that last time.
It's a thing.
I think we went through all of the ones we know.
Yeah, true. That's how we started. This is
there.
all the beer we have, though.
Un poquito biru.
Un poquito...
It's Spanish and
Biru.
Japanese.
Biru. Because times are tough.
Yeah. What with there's a strike, right? There's the beer people.
Yeah, the
striking.
beer strikes
That's
of
what's happening in the
Montreal.
world.
It's been going on for a while. Beer workers are not
Other
beering.
than that, everything else is great.
Yeah, the word's in a great spot.
Yeah.
So much.
No, actually, they're not striking. They're essential workers. Did you know that? The
Actually,
beer makers are essential workers.
Wow. Actually, funny thing, I went to, here in Canada for that international audience that I'm pretty sure we're racking up by our third episode.
Oh, yeah.
The liquor is only sold at government stores.
Oh, yeah.
The good old
Sack.
sack.
Yeah.
And funny thing, now that we're in quarantine-ish,
Quarantish.
I passed by a sack the other day.
Yeah.
And the line for the sack went all around the store.
Shit. Was everybody 2 meters apart, or were they holding hands?
They were, they were making out with strangers and
As
just
you
bumping
would.
up. When there's somebody in line standing behind you
times.
and they're breathing down your neck and you're just
Now it's extra.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Now it's corona.
Make sure you touch.
Yeah.
But it's surprising. It came up in conversation at one point. What are people gonna do in this time but drink?
Yeah. Yeah. It's are we talking about films today? Or we could keep talking about this, and we'll get into the films that we watched. Clerks. We'll talk about Clerks later. But while we're talking about Clerks stuff, these people are working like clerks. What was I gonna say about that? Yeah, the whole alcohol thing's really some people are it's an essential need. Come on, there's alcoholics that if they don't have their alcohol, they can go into I think it's called septic shock. So there is a danger. Oh yeah,
is that a thing?
Cut off an alcoholic.
Oh well, yeah. No, if you cut somebody with a physical dependency,
you're gonna kill them.
Yeah.
And so there's that aspect, but there's also the aspect of normalcy and. You gotta keep the spirits up. If people are...
That's why they're called spirits.
That's right. But it's true, because, man, if they pull that away and it's people's... It's a worrying thing that people can get,
I mean, you're locked down with people that you probably hate, your family, and you don't have any alcohol to get that, to tolerate them,
That's right.
People are gonna get stabby and chokey with each other.
Hopefully not. Yeah.
So, keep them good and drunk.
Keep them good and drunk, because that helps to alleviate violence.
Exactly. So speaking of alleviating violence with alcohol, we'll see how we get with.
I'm finna get drunk with this.
Oh yeah.
Not gonna happen.
So today. The other thing that we can do besides drinking and trying not to kill each other is watch movies.
Yeah.
So we watched Clerks.
We sure did.
Your
suggestion.
Yeah, my suggestion, because
I watched it so long ago. Well, why? Because
it's something that I really, really do. I try to push Kevin Smith onto people. I was like, dude, you gotta check it out. It's pretty fun. It's pretty wild. It's pretty unique. You see a movie by Kevin Smith, and it's a Kevin Smith film.
It's very Kevin Smithy.
And no matter if you're seeing Clerks or you're seeing Yoga Hosers or Tusk or Dogma or whatever, you're okay, that was a Kevin Smith flick. And it's divisive. There's a lot of people that don't like Kevin Smith.
Yeah, he's for sure the type of director you'd say is niche.
So niche. And, he has his core audience. He's got his core fans, and they're loyal, intense fans, and I will count myself as one of those. I'm a big Kevin Smith fan. Full disclosure, I guess. I listen to his podcast. I check out like his interviews.
You watch his poster and masturbate.
Yeah, of course. I have a huge Kevin Smith poster in my room.
Yeah.
Like the first thing I wake up,
I
hung it from the ceiling. So the next first thing I wake up and it's like, oh, Kevin Smith, the Smith. No, but I'm a big fan of him because...
Why? Yeah, I want to hear why you're a big fan of the Smith.
I'm a big fan of the Smith because he is authentic in being Kevin Smith.
Yeah, he do what he do.
And it's something that you see a lot of people that have a style and they have, especially filmmakers, right? You see people that's like Wes Anderson, for example. Yeah. I love Wes Anderson. I love his movies. You watch a Wes Anderson film and you're like, it's Wes Anderson. You watch a fucking Wes Anderson like frame and you're like, that's Wes Anderson. And a lot of people try to imitate that and that's what you get. I'm not saying that to any fault of him, but I think that the Wes Anderson that the world sees is the work of Wes Anderson. You see, that's a Wes Anderson. Well, that's a Wes Anderson work. Mm-hmm. But when you think about who is Wes Anderson as a person,
it doesn't come across as much in the films. Whereas,
I mean, his personal life, I'm pretty sure that there's people that love a certain director or a certain personality, and they're like, oh yeah, and this person, you follow them on social media and stuff, you get to see who they are. But Kevin Smith, especially because he's been a podcaster for so long, he's been podcasting for like close to 15 years now. He was one of the OGs. He was one of the pioneers of the podcasting business, and he's famously said that he started podcasting because they could fire you from being a director, they could fire you from like being an actor, a writer, whatever. But if you're a podcaster, they cannot fire you from being you.
Yeah, except YouTube. YouTube's all over that.
Yeah, that I guess too. But so him being a creator that's so...
Yeah, he's like the definition of indie too, right?
Yeah,
he's like always controlled. Like he produced that film.
He's to the point. Like I've got stories about that, and stories he's told. So I'm pretty sure people listening to this like, oh fucking, I love Kevin Smith. They pretty much know their stories because he's such a storyteller that even he tells the stories of his life in such a way in interviews and at conventions and in his podcasting.
Yeah.
But just the fact that he's so uniquely, authentically who he is, from the aspect that it's like he's a comic book nerd, he's a podcaster, he's a filmmaker, he's a writer, and all of that comes across. Like he can't turn off being himself. So he's always being himself. And that's something that I really value as a creator. Yeah,
and I think like what you're saying about like recognizing his personality like through his work, I think like a lot of the dialogue is like I can kind of imagine him he's writing his...
Oh, 100%.
It's all like basically he's vocalizing what he wants to say kind of thing through his other characters. And then once a film, he actually speaks up and goes, hey, blah, 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 theme of the film. Boom, Godline leaves.
And it's a criticism that he's gotten a lot that said like, well, every character sounds like Kevin Smith. And even
the dialogue is weird. It's like that's one thing about the dialogue is the dialogue. First thing I said is like, man, the dialogue's so weird, but it's good weird.
Yeah. It's interesting seeing Clerks in 2020 when it was a film done in like 93, 94, and thinking how much of the dialogue and the way people talk in that movie, it's not so unique nowadays. Of course, there's a certain rhythm and like a lyrics aspect to it of how people banter with each other and how they just bounce off ideas so fast that like the actors are just kind of...
It really feels like they're saying the words instead of feeling. Yeah,
exactly, right? So it's like they have discussion, especially when you've got Dante and Veronica, that they're talking about like, how many people you slept with and all this. Yeah. So instead of him as a writer and director taking the time to show like, this is what you're saying, this is the emotion that the character is feeling, it's more of just like banter. And you get it from the dialogue instead of getting it from the performance. So much that it's almost like Kevin Smith as a character is delivering all the lines.
Yeah,
there's not that much of a difference between characters as they're delivering the lines.
And is that the case through like all of his films? Because like for me, this is his first film, right? It's like his breakout film. is that like a thing that he's kind of conserved in his style, or is that a thing where it's kind of like beginner's mistake?
I
jammed in
think
too much dialogue, and the actors are just like, I am saying these words, and I need to see. Oh, you're gonna say that? Okay, I'm gonna say this. You know, it's like.
I think he's always kept it in a certain way, but it's not as like a ping pong game in his later films, and especially he usually directs what he writes. He's got a couple of films that he's directed that he didn't write. And it does, like, he's working with more experienced actors, not to fault of the performances of Clerks, but everybody there was pretty much, that was their first movie project that they were involved with.
Yeah, and still, I mean, like, all the characters were, like, freaking, like, lovable and, like...
Yeah,
you get attached to all of them and everything, and it's still good character building, you know? It's like, the acting wasn't that... I didn't find the acting distracting. It's
no, not at all.
The writing, it's a unique film. It's like... Yeah, you don't normally write dialogue that way. You don't, like, the people don't speak like normal people.
But it's weird because they don't speak like normal people, but they don't speak like movie characters either.
Exactly. And I think actually that's the strength of the film too, because like it's kind of, well, one of the first strengths is that like it's relatable for so many people who don't usually see that relatable content in films. It's about bullshit dépanneur job, like a convenience store in the rest of the world.
It's like Matt's little French corner. Like, welcome to the Quebec.
Exactly.
In Quebec, Quebecers have these places called...
actually, it's called Québécois.
In Québécois, they got this place called Dépanneur.
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 They're actually convenience stores, but more convenient because you can actually buy wine there now and beer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So.
Yeah, that's true. Well, but in some convenience stores you can buy. I mean, I guess depending on like where you live in the world, right? But
stuff,
like,
but
if you're...
It's true. A lot of them you can buy like hard liquor. And
you're
stuff.
from
we're less convenient. Yeah.
I mean, but if you're in the English Canada, you cannot.
No, that's even more complicated. You got to go to like LCBO and stuff,
or the beer store in Ontario.
That's what they call it.
The beer store.
It's like the nickname for it. But what was I saying? Yeah, it's like relatable for the common folk because like most people have had a job where they were a clerk at some, or a cashier, and it's like that appeals to people who are, you're not used to seeing that many films appeal to that kind of crowd, and that kind of we were saying about the dialogue. That weirdness is like it captures a lot of the really silly interactions that would normally never make it on screen because they're not important to drive a story forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of, but in this case, like that is the story, right? So it's like it's refreshing compared to what you're normally seeing.
And it's an interesting
like the conversation about the guy. In the car with a camera whipping left and right.
Yeah.
It's like, who the hell puts that in the film? And it's awesome. Yeah. It's like one of the best scenes.
And nowadays you get that more, You're not that impressed or shocked by like, hey, you're having a conversation for sucking your own dick.
No, after like Superbad and all that stuff, like that became super commonplace. Like and, everyone's got those ridiculous conversations now.
But again, this is
before.
94, Yeah, exactly. And a big aspect of it is like, there's these, around that time, you've heard the concept of mumblecore.
Is that like the film? Mumble rap where they just...
Not necessarily in film, and I don't know if that's the right term, but it's when, for example, Tarantino, it's putting dialogue in a movie that doesn't move the story forward. Because, when you write a script, you have a certain amount of pages that says that the movie's a certain amount of length, it takes a certain time, so you want to be very economical with what you write. So it's like every scene needs to, we've all heard that, right? Every scene needs to fulfill at least 2 or 3 purposes at the same time. You drive the story, develop the character, show something of the world.
Shit.
Yeah. So the fact that writers start putting dialogue that has nothing to do with any of those goals, it's just mumbling in a way, right? And Tarantino does it in Pulp Fiction. Yeah. The whole, like, what they call a pork pounder?
The McRoyal with cheese.
The Royale with cheese, yeah. That whole conversation,
That whole conversation, when I was in France, made me buy a McRoyal with cheese, and I bought it with a Heineken beer.
Oh, nice.
It was the best.
You can do that.
You can do that. It was the best. Couldn't believe it.
That's great.
But yeah, that whole that's like one of my favorite, like, like one of my favorite film school anecdotes is like learning about that Pulp Fiction. Just that opening scene is just like it's like 5 minutes or something. Like it's a fairly long scene about absolutely nothing.
Right,
and it's just talking about hamburgers.
Exactly, and that like if you go to your the proper way to write a script, especially back then, that it was even more formulaic back then, storytelling and filmmaking. You like anybody would read your script and be like, you gotta cut this. It's not serving a purpose, not anything. But the purpose that those lines fulfill is that you are actually fleshing out the world as a real world, and the characters as real humans. Yeah,
that and like, so the example of the Pulp Fiction, what's really like, I love that scene. Like I know more about it. Like it's especially that they're establishing the dynamic between the two characters, like the way that they talk to each other. You're basically showing like who drives the conversation and who's mentoring the other person, and the other one's more in a listening. And like once in a while challenging, but it's kind of like that dynamic is what's being put forward, and that could have been put forward in a classical way where it could have been like, all right, who we killing today? How we doing it? You know, but it's instead of that, it's McRoyal with cheese, which is so awesome because that makes it feel way more real.
And there's way more. It sets the tone very well. It's like a little absurd, and it also fleshes out the characters in an interesting and original way.
Makes them more relatable.
100%. And you see the same ideas in Clerk when you have Randall have these conversations about, you know, they're blowing up the Death Star and there's like independent contractors in there. Like the rebels just like committed like genocide or like they just murdered a bunch of people. Yeah. And the way those scenes are framed is usually Randall comes over to Dante, says some ridiculous pop culture or like just an observation of ridiculousness because he doesn't give a shit about his work or he's just a guy that's just like thinking about these things. He's carefree, he doesn't give a shit, he doesn't complain. And then but at the same time, it's like a very almost like intellectual character because he's always thinking, he's always analyzing this shit, but he's not troubled by it. And then Dante is a character that he's always uptight. He's always like, why are you having this conversation? Like, I'd rather be focusing on work. That's a meaningless job. So in a way, it does define the relationship that eventually sets up the theme and reinforces the theme of the movie about how these characters go about being clerks. And it's interesting because Kevin Smith and Tarantino are contemporaries, and they're both from the Miramax production house in a way. The way they started, Tarantino started before, and he did Reservoir Dogs. And a little bit after, Miramax bought Clerks. The story of how Clerks happened was Kevin Smith was going to film school. He decided to go to film school. He went to Vancouver Film School, where he developed a love for all things Canadian. And he met Scott Mosher, who is his partner in crime and producer of everything he does. And at some point, Kevin Smith was like, you know what? I'd rather take the money that I'm going to put in film school, drop out, and make my own film. Scott Mosher was like, no, man, I'd rather just finish school. So they made a deal. They said, like, you finish school, I'm going to go home. We're both going to write a script. Whoever finishes the script first, that's the script we're going to produce.
Jeez. So I mean, that's pretty easy. Like, one guy's busy with school. You're at home doing fuck all except writing a script. So there you go.
So exactly. And that's pretty much, and that's kind of having the relationship because a lot of people know Kevin Smith and a lot of people are familiar with his work, but Scott Mosher is an integral part of his work. Since he's been the producer on every single Kevin Smith movie that they've done, and part of the whole Kevin Smith brand, he's been a producer in that as well. And he's got a lot of knowledge on, like, especially at this time where they're doing Clerks, right? Because he's still in film school, they're developing this shit. So Kevin Smith finishes the script. He brings everybody from like their Scott Mosher and I think a couple of other people from film school to Jersey, where he used to work at a convenience store. So he has access to the convenience store. He said it that he learned it from Robert Rodriguez, that they're like, okay, how if you're gonna do a movie, you don't have any money, like
shoot with what's available.
Shoot with what's available. So he said, I've got a convenience store.
That's dope.
Fun fact is that part of why they can't open the steel shutters from in the movie, it's because they had to shoot at night when the convenience store was closed.
Okay.
So they're like, how can we shoot at night? If we have a window right behind it, it's like, well, just keep it shut. Say somebody put gum in the lock. We cannot open it. And things like that. So they worked with what they had. They make the movie for $40,000.
Whoa, that's decent.
It's pretty decent. And I think it was, he said that most of it was the film stock that they had to buy. Yeah. And the food for the crew and everybody that they were paying. Yeah. And they did local castings in Jersey and got a team, got everything. And eventually they just put in the festival circuit. It ended up in Sundance. And in Sundance, it got recognition. Before going to Sundance, I think at a local screening in or a festival in New Jersey or somewhere around that, critics saw it. And he tells the story in such a way that they're doing the screening. There's like friends, family, and like one old dude that he was like, oh my God, this guy, he doesn't even know what we're talking about, sucking your own dick and like 37 dicks.
This guy has no idea what he walked into.
Oh my God, it's going to be awful for him. And he says that by the end of the movie, he just stands up and leaves. And he's like, well, no fucking, of course, man. Sure. There's like, somebody like fucks a corpse in this movie. But eventually, what he didn't know is that he was a film journalist. And he reaches out to somebody else that writes an article about Clerks. That gets Clerks in Sundance.
Dang guy.
And in Sundance, the people that work for Miramax, that at that point was run by Harvey Weinstein.
Classic.
Harvey, they're like, Harvey, you need to see this movie. You gotta see this movie. He's like, nah, fuck it, whatever. So they sent him.
And then they said there's a dead guy who has sex with a woman in the bathroom.
He's like, oh, be the fucking yes. Harvey, Jesus,
classic Harvey.
Classic Harvey. So they actually try to send him a review copy ahead of time. Like somebody contacts Kevin Smith and he's like, hey, we wonder if we can get like a copy of the movie. We want to show it around, like whatever. He sends to them. They show it to Harvey. Harvey's like, I don't know. He didn't make it through the movie. And I think that at the point where he's famously quoted saying that, like, at the point where they're like, oh, it's 37 dicks. It's like, why am I watching these? Like, fuck this shit. And it's something that's very true because I think you get used to how it's written and the dialogue as the movie progresses.
Yeah, exactly. In the beginning, it's and that's like the highlight of where the dialogue is the most uncomfortable because it's like it's right after this really long shot where they're like both sitting down and like chatting, and it's just like the dialogue is like honestly in that scene kind of unbearable, to be honest. Like personally, I was like, well, this is super unnatural. So it's like the peak, but then later on, you're like, no, that's the style of the thing, and like it kind of grows on you. That like ridiculous, like those ridiculous conversations really grow on you.
Especially then like after that scene, you get Randall as a character.
Oh yeah,
and Randall's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, he makes the film.
And so eventually the film makes it to Sundance. They show it around. It gets recognition. It gets like some grand jury prize or something like that. It's so funny because like Kevin Smith and Scott Mosher were like, oh yeah, whatever, we got the movie. Nobody's gonna fucking care. Like nobody's gonna see it. Like we're not even gonna go to like the to this like special ceremony or whatever. And the organizers was like, no, Kevin, you gotta go.
You gotta show up.
And it's like, come on, man. Like, I didn't even bring a suit. Like, whatever. There's some kids that are like, he was like 24 or something.
Shit.
They're like, whatever. We're just gonna fucking show it around. We're gonna fuck around, and then we're gonna see some movies, and we're gonna fly back to Jersey. Because the movie didn't get so much like critical acclaim or even popularity. Nobody was seeing the movie before that. Eventually, they had a screening. The screening was packed. And people were all talking about like Clerks, and it has in part to do because of the article that this reporter wrote that she was like a big deal writer at the time. After the screening, him and Scott Mosher talked to Harvey Weinstein. He's like, oh, you gotta come have lunch with us, like whatever. So, and in that moment, he buys the movie. He buys the distribution rights to the movie and brings him into Miramax. And in the time, Miramax was the production house the distribution house that had Tarantino movies. It was what A24 is now. It was Miramax in the 90s.
That sounds good.
So being...
I have no idea what A24 is.
A24 is like the...
I don't know anything.
It's not like the indie because it's like you've got indie, then you've got like huge big budget films, and you've got that weird in between that you're like, these might be made by like a small budget, but at the same time it's like an interesting... It's like indie vibes on a big budget kind of production house. That's like A24. And like we could go through the list. And
so at that time, Miramax was kind of like that.
Miramax was the place to be for new, young.
That makes sense too if you're talking about Tarantino at the time of Reservoir Dogs.
At that point, it's exactly that. And so Clerks is in between Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. So like he's with that crowd at that point, and I was like,
it's a good crowd.
Yeah, exactly. And it's everyone loves the film. He just like it cemented his career as like now you're a filmmaker. Gets him more films. I mean, I think it came with a contract with Miramax of like your next 3 films we're distributing them or something like that.
Shit.
And I mean he's 24 at that point.
Can you imagine?
It's crazy. So just. Yeah.
You were talking about how, but how do you, like, what was I going to say? I think we both lost our train of thought there. Let's have a moment of silence.
Dialogue.
What was I going to say? There was a thing I wanted to say about, I don't know. I guess we're going to have to cut this part.
Probably is. Most likely not.
We'll just fester in the awkwardness.
Yeah.
That could be good. Is fester a word?
Yeah, like wounds fester.
Yeah, that's right.
Just festering. It's like sickening.
Oh, this is weird. I should just grab a sip from this cup that's hanging out in Fano's place. This is really creepy.
Is it?
No, but it's not. It's just
it's an anime girl dressed in like a Mexican costume.
It's hilarious. I love it. Yeah. What else is there to say?
I don't know. I mean...
So yes, that's what I wanted to say. What did he go on to do after? Like
after that,
after Clerks,
he did,
what was his next film?
Mallrats, I believe.
Because I feel like he's never had any films that made it like really big. Like he's always been like a cult, like
he's got
under the radar director.
He's been kind of like under the radar indie, and then like he's got some really like bomb movies, like and then he's got some hits, and then he's kind of just like kind of stayed in that line. And he talks a lot about how he makes movies, how he approaches it, what kind of stories he wants to tell. So after Clerks, he went and, if I'm not mistaken, he did Mallrats, and Mallrats bombed. The thing about Mallrats is that it aged pretty well now that we're all in that kind of like nostalgia time for that time.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot more about his love for like comic books, and it's more of a pop culture kind of movie. And it's just about hanging out at the mall. So he's got, in a similar fashion as Clerks, like characters that are kind of just going through a day where there's like not much happening.
They're very much films about nothing.
Mm-hmm. And then, but this one's more like it's got a little bit more of a structure. There's like a guy that's trying patching up the relationship with his girlfriend. There's like a big event happening at the mall, and the mall's kind of like the backdrop of where that's happening. But then at this point, he starts to get like interest from like other actors, and people are like, oh shit, he's the guy that made Clerks. Because Clerks blew up as like the indie film of that time. So Ben Affleck is in Mallrats. Who else is in Mallrats? I gotta check.
No,
I'm not that much of a Kevin Smith encyclopedia.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, he starts to get more attention for that movie, and he doesn't sell well at all.
Fuck. Did you imagine that, man? Like, you come off like of a big hit, and then you're on Miramax, so you're like, okay, I gotta do something big, you know, because like you're
and now you have a budget, right?
You got a budget, and people are looking at you, like Man, the pressure to deliver after a thing like that must be pretty intense, especially because your film is like such a like an offbeat thing. It's kind of like it's your style, and it's just like on that line between weird and awful, but weird and great. Yeah, it's like. Yeah, I think it's got to be like a ton of pressure, and like it's got to be hard to deliver.
Well, it's a bit of a fear.
I wouldn't like to be in that position.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and you're probably going to be in that position because then you make a movie, and you're resourceful and you're clever, and you're probably like thinking out like how are we going to make this right, and you make it, and it's a hit, and then you're like, shit. What's the next thing that I'm going to do? And you probably already have a studio lined up saying like, hey, we're going to give you so much money for this movie. You've already got distribution all figured out. So now you got a budget.
Yeah.
Now you've got people that are like, oh shit, like...
you got yes men.
Yeah, exactly.
And
you
like,
got yes men.
Yeah, and like suddenly, boom, your process is different. Because you're not struggling for everything, thinking about like, okay, how do we film in a freaking location without any windows? Like, with like, we'll just say it's jammed, man. We're going to film it, and we're going to say it's jammed. Somebody put some gum in there, and it'll piss him off, and it's like an extra layer while he's pissed off. And then everyone's going to come in. They're going to be like, is it open? And it's like, right? So it's like, that's part of your
cleverness
process.
Comes out of that.
Exactly.
How do we fix it? We
struggle.
throw money at it. And
exactly. And then it becomes so simple, right? It's just like, throw some fucking, throw some 9Ks through there. We're going to be at the beach. There's going to be tons of light. It's going to be super bright. We're good, Well, it's a different process.
It's something that you could argue, and it's probably something that happened in Mallrats, because in Mallrats, all of a sudden they're shooting in a mall. I don't know if it was a set that they built a mall or if it was an actual mall. Knowing him, it was probably an actual mall.
Yeah.
So you had people there. You got people like Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck was starting out. Jason Lee, which was his first movie. You've got Stan Lee actually made his a cameo there.
Shit.
And a lot of the conversations about comics and just hanging out in a mall in the 90s. There's like the part of the plot of it, well, not a plot, but like a Chekhov's gun, I guess, of the movie, like a foreshadow thing. It's like Stan Lee's gonna come to the mall and be signing comic books. So naturally, it's the kind of movie that nowadays, with all of the comic book culture that's in the mainstream, people look at this movie and it's like, oh, that's fucking cool. It's nice.
It makes sense now, kind of thing.
Yeah, but back then it flopped. People were like, well, he was like a one-hit kind of like director. That's it, one and done. Clerks, count him out. And then he does Jersey Girl,
which is a name I somehow remember. So I feel like that one was kind of
Jersey Girl is universally hated.
Damn it, I fucked up. Okay.
So I don't know if it's Jersey Girl before Mallrats or after, but it's like bum.
Shit.
And then he's like, fuck, what are we gonna do?
Clerks 2.
No, Clerks is after. Then he does Chasing Amy.
Okay. Oh, you've talked to me about
Chasing Amy is an amazing movie. Nice. It's one...
he was probably hungry again.
I think so. I think that's what happened. And he was probably like, no, Kevin, we're not going to give you like a lot of money. You got to prove yourself again. It's like, it's three and you're out at that point. Right?
Oh, yeah. No, you can't. I don't think you can fuck up that many films. Like, yeah, they want their money. They're not going to take that risk, man. There's so much money being thrown around. Like, you can't. Like, everybody makes a film that doesn't become the massive hit. I mean, most films are not a massive hit. So it's kind of like, okay, but like if we're throwing money at two of your films, man.
Yeah, and they make like,
why would I throw more money at
right? You're losing money with those two movies. And he's always said that most of his movies do better on DVDs. Like DVDs and because almost all of his work has become like a cult hit. Yeah. So the thing about Chasing Amy is that Chasing Amy is it's a rom-com, but in a very different way. It's not the traditional it's not the traditional formula, it's not the traditional thing. And this is like 97, 98. And so you've got a comic book artist that's played by Ben Affleck, because he and Ben Affleck were tight back then. I guess they're tight now, but they had like a long period of like they weren't friends anymore.
Lucidness.
Yeah, like so it's a whole fucking thing. It's a whole rabbit hole that thing.
But
hear about
if I'm being frank here. What? If I'm being frank.
So Chasing Amy is about a comic book artist that falls in love with a girl, and the girl is gay. and they have this relationship in which they're friends, but she's kind of with him, but not because she's also trying to figure out like her sexuality. Yeah, first she's like, and then it's how the characters deal with that. And especially the Ben Affleck is like struggling to understand and accept that. So it's a very interesting film that is still a romantic comedy, and by that time he kind of does that the classic Kevin Smith, not formula but style is very, very well in place, because you've got the same characters. You've got Jen, Silent Bob show up again.
Oh shit!
The character actually of Amy. Is referenced in Clerks. You remember that? It's like, oh, that's Alisa's sister. It's like Alisa is the character in Chasing Amy. Cool. So even I don't think I don't think he had it planned out like at that point. But he's always tried to incorporate all his movie into his movie universe.
I love that shit.
And it's a lot of fun because he was the first. I would dare say he was the first director that was doing that in movies.
Like connecting them through
saying universes? Like all of this happens in the same universe and you see characters jumping from one to the other.
Dang.
Because in all the movies you've got Jane, Silent Bob, and in all the movies Silent Bob says like the one theme.
Drops theme.
Yeah, drops theme, and it was an accidental thing.
That's cool.
Because he didn't want Silent Bob to speak at all. Mm-hmm. That's why Silent Bob, right? And that final line in Clerks, Jay was supposed to say it, because Jay's telling him like, I don't know, man, you got this girl that brings you lasagna, and she cares about you. And
but he talks too ghetto to be able to like really drive the point home.
The thing is like, Jay wasn't, and Jason Mewes wasn't an actor. Jason Mewes was one kid that he knew. And pretty much he was like, okay, Jay, get in the frame, and you're just gonna do Jay shit. He says like, that's how this guy is in real life. Like, I mean, he's not a drug dealer or anything.
Allegedly.
No, he had a drug problem. Jason Mewes had a huge drug problem at some point, and it's kind of like he's a very interesting person. There's a whole story about him like getting out of it, and, like going like I think he's been like sober for something like 10 years now. Like that's his own thing. But Kevin Smith has always said that that was the guy, like personality wise, like that's who he was. And he's like, I just want to put like the world needs to know this kid.
And they've been like this, like
for sure,
right? Yeah. I know he's like, isn't he? Does he do the podcast with them, or are they
one
tour
of his
for
podcasts?
Films? They're always like connected.
They have a podcast that's called Jay and Silent Bob Get Old.
That's awesome.
And they do it on the road. It's like a show.
There you go. So that was like both of my ideas into one. But in reality, none of them were my ideas, because I was just like, what is it they do? But then I messed up. And
they do it.
It turns out they do it.
And it's pretty fun. But since he wasn't an actor, I mean, obviously he's acting.
He like wasn't able to deliver what he wanted.
He didn't remember the lines.
All right, I'm not going to be that silent. And then he says it.
Exactly. So it's like he leaves before dropping the main line, and Kevin Smith's like, fuck it, I guess I'll say it. So he says it, and then that becomes a thing.
So it's like, to me, that's like disappointing that that's a mistake, because that's the strength of that line. Is like, you got this guy called Silent Bob. He's super silent, and then like when he does choose to voice something, it's like something really meaningful and important, and it like gave his line way more importance. And then so to hear it's an accident, it's like, well, fuck, you know. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's a happy accident. How many times, like, you've had happy accidents in movies, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's part of that, like, there's the things that you know that you want to put in there as a filmmaker. Then there's everything else that everybody in the casting crew bring into the project. And then there's the shit that just happens when you start rolling.
And they're often mistakes, and you're like, fuck. And then you're like editing it, and you're like, wait. This works so well. Those are the best when that happens. Oh man!
And I think there's it's not like an improvisational aspect of it, but there's the movie being bigger than the sum of its parts.
Oh yeah.
And it's things that people are like, oh, I really like that. You know, like people.
It's like the concept of the rewrites. Also, it's like I don't think people understand. Like, you know, there's 3 writing process. There's your writing, then you're filming it, and then the editing. Those are the 3 writings. And it's like, in like before really making films, like even at the beginning when I was making films, like I didn't really get that. Like in my mind, I was making a movie and then I was filming the same movie and then I was editing the same movie and it was all the same movie. But like, oh my God, we've gone dry. Oh my God, it's tragic.
I'm listening.
But yeah, so it's like, oh yeah, there is a red light. So I was talking the whole time, and I was like,
I think that should have been my response because I'm on the angle though.
Yeah, but yeah, the whole rewriting thing, for me, I think it really, really hit home doing the trailer. It's like the first time where like, yup, like they're complete rewrite, like all the whole way through, and like that concept that when you're filming it, it's no longer what you wrote, and when you're editing it, it's no longer what you've shot. It's like
it's so scary.
It's scary as fuck. Cause like, but again, it's also, if you look at it kind of like sculpting, it's kind of like you're sculpting it rough, and then you're shaping it in detail, and then you're polishing it.
Yeah.
Right? I know nothing about sculpting. It's like somebody's sculptor's listening to me go like,
that's not how you sculpt.
This is how we sculpt. It's like.
I would love to see like somebody in the comments like, this is how these motherfuckers know anything about sculpting.
Thinks he knows about sculpting.
Let me fucking sculpt. I'm gonna sculpt you right here. I got your sculptor right here, motherfucker.
Yeah. Anyways, metaphors about sculpting always lead to grabbing balls.
Of course. It's like you gotta grab the sculpture by the balls.
Yes.
And just do that.
That's step one of the process.
Yeah, just mold it with your.
How do you think they did the David?
Yeah.
He's got like,
he's got like, yeah. You grab the sculpting by the balls and just everything else just pops into shape.
Yeah.
Just like you grab something so hard by the balls that's just like all the excess marble just also.
All the,
Same thing with a movie.
Yeah, same thing.
So it's interesting the trailer, that you bring up the trailer.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll see that soon up in the webs.
I'm in conversations for releasing it soon with Sir Jarrett of The Man's Variety.
So in the trailer, because it had a very, very weird production life, I would say.
All of it was weird.
So it was a project that was commissioned.
Yeah.
So somebody else, well, I guess that you applied to it, you earned that project, but then it was for somebody else.
Yeah.
Which it's
publicity.
Very, but it's like artistic publicity.
Yeah,
you know, it's not just like, oh well, make us a corporate video.
Yeah, it was basically almost artistic freedom in the sense that like pitch us your idea, and then from there we're gonna beep beep beep, like we're gonna be a part of the process to like remove ridiculous jokes and stuff that's like won't fit in. But then I mean, almost everything went in.
And it's been mentioned before when dealing with this project within our like inner circle that it's pretty much like working for a studio.
Yeah.
You know, we've got executive producers, right? So dealing with that project, I mean, for me, it was obviously like a first having to deal with that. And then it's like, oh, fuck, they want us to do what? And and you know, and so Eric Jonathan were like, no, well, I mean, it's the same thing if it were like making a movie with somebody else's money, dealing with an executive producer. Mm-hmm. That's what they do. And it's like, fuck, that's right.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be. But having that in mind, you know, like, the process started with you had an idea. You and Zoe had the original idea, and then it came to the writers' room.
Compared to that, it's like
I mean, if we
so different
because there's those layers, right?
So
like
different. Especially when you're bringing in other writers too.
I can only imagine, and even in the writers' room, right? When we were you, Jonathan, and I, and we were writing that out. Yeah. The first thing that we wrote. And the end product of it, even before it got translated into French, version, right? Yeah. Because it went like translation. It was French, English, French, French.
Yeah, we French a lot.
And then and that's how coronavirus happened. So even in that writer's room, when you bring other voices, other creators, like, and even people that you worked with in the past and that you have the same kind of vibe and same kind of humor and same kind of process in the same room, the thing that you bring in and the thing that comes out is extremely different. If you're lucky, it's going to be different for
at least
the
best. In the same line. Yeah, exactly. I don't think if you're lucky. I think if you're any good at it.
Well, I mean, I mean, we're in an incredibly fortunate position in which we can write with people that like that we're working along the same lines.
Yeah.
In parts that we all are like, even when we have
found each other. Like nobody was imposed, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. And there were moments, obviously, when we were like, no, that's a bad idea.
Oh, yeah.
And there are moments where it's
ideas.
like two people voted against one, and a different two people voted against another different one. But
and then there's some bad ideas that ended up going in the trailer. And then during the screening, those bad ideas, calm the fuck down, actually really worked.
Yeah. Well, that's and I think that's the whole point, the whole weird rant that we're having is how those ideas transform. And I'm curious, like I think any big budget production would have the same kind of process following, and like
probably
listening,
bigger,
obviously like a bigger, it's like
more
a bigger
variables.
scale and with harsher consequences in a way. I've heard it described as like you're gambling with somebody else's money.
Oh, that's gotta be the best.
I don't know. Just the studio coming down and being like, where's the cut? You know, where's the shit? We want you to take this out. And you're like, nah, fuck it. Right? Artistic integrity, man. It's like, no, we didn't like it. It focused poorly in China. And you're like, China? Where do you focus testing my movies on China? You know who the fuck I am? I'm mad fucking rich.
I can't wait.
Because it's something that I personally, I hate the idea of movies being focus tested.
I know, yeah. It's like, wait, do you have the best investigators in the world to be able to find my niche audience? Like, how do you know? Like, I don't want to make films that are for the general every person public, and like, I want films like here's a bunch of people. This will test this positive on average for everyone. I don't want that. I wanted to test this great for this many people instead of this many people this great. Like, I want it to be
like there's a chunk of these many people that don't like it. Exactly. They can go fuck themselves. It's not for them. They can hate it for like her.
It's like that test audience just guarantees that you have a meh reaction. Well, like you have a generally positive reaction. You're not going to get like a whoa, you know?
You know what time it is? You know it. It's shitting on the big studio time.
We do that a lot.
I love that time. I love that segment of the show. So that's the reason.
We should cut the toilet.
And just like a big
let's not cut the toilet.
Like a steamy, just like... We'll find.
One day.
You know what? I have the right cut for this.
I don't want to cut. What are you talking about?
You'll say it in the edit.
Okay.
Thanks to editing magic. I think that's the reason why you get such bland movies, right? And there's obviously certain movies. If you had Clerks, to bring it back to the point of this episode, or you've had Pulp Fiction, and you focus test those movies,
that would never worked.
Assuming they would get made in the first place, because they probably wouldn't.
No.
The movie would be very different.
Yeah.
They'd be like, you cannot, like, I'm betting, like, safe studio executive for Clerks.
Yeah.
Like, you cut that shit in the car. Like, no talking about sucking your own dick.
Yeah.
The guy in the bathroom was not dead.
One of the characters needs to be a lesbian. It's got to be woke.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird because, like, it's not as woke.
This isn't woke.
This isn't woke.
No, this isn't remotely woke.
There's reference, like, I mean, they say fag once.
Whoa. Cut that out.
Yeah, cut that. I think it's something that Kevin Smith actually has said at some point somewhere, that he's like, I think it ages well, but just like we said fag once, and it's like
times, man.
It's like, it's not like super troubling. Yeah. It's like that's the only thing that I'm like, But then you have the joke about the guys that are like gay and have like sheep. They're sheep farmers or something.
Oh yeah.
But that's kind of like the only.
I think like back to the testing. Worse, I think, than that is the formulas. Like if you talk about a certain monthly subscription based service who I hopefully one day want to make films for. I will not mention by
overlord.
name. Exactly. They've like this film would have never been made because like they have a formula pretty much. Mm-hmm. It's like if you're not like, I feel like the films are getting more and more formatted, and it's like if you don't have this and that, and if that by this page you don't have this, then we're gonna like, I feel like the studios, because they're throwing around so much big money and there's like so many films getting made, and it's like the competition is like super fierce because there's tons of stuff. It's like I feel like now everything's super formatted, which is really annoying. And it's like, how do you make films that are interesting, that stand out in a crowd, and while still having some sort of artistic freedom? I feel like that's kind of like going to be the challenge of like our generation of filmmakers.
But I think that, I mean, if we think about art and history kind of coming in waves, you know, I'm hopeful that we're going to reach that tipping point in which it's like, this formulaic, the studio controlled, these bass, and people are going to be like, you know what? I want some fucking original voice. And
Bebop cinema time.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I am, and that's what I want to see. And that's the reason why I fucking love Kevin Smith, because, you know, like, if you've watched Yoga Hosers, even I'm like, dude, please no, don't. But at the same time, you've got somebody that's so true and so unique to his own voice and his own style, and making the movies that he wants to make.
Yeah, you don't give a fuck.
That, exactly.
I feel like all the best directors are the ones who don't give a fuck. It's like there's the mass crowd films that will get made, and then there's the directors who don't give a fuck, but they're on top of the mass like, you know, average run-of-the-mill film. Yeah. Like, the ones who we remember are the ones who don't give a fuck, and they do what they want.
100%. And it's like I think that's the movies that when you tell people, like, hey, what's your favorite movie? You know, like, they might go to a time in Hollywood that it was more of, like, the grand, epic Hollywood. Yeah. And I'm not even saying, like, the Golden Age. I'm saying, like, Ben-Hur and shit like that. I'm saying, like, Indiana Jones and like Star Wars and Back to the Future. Like, I don't know why I'm getting like Spielberg related films, but like things like that you're like, oh yeah, those movies are awesome because they inspired a generation. They inspire like but now in this like Hollywood era right now, they're so almost interchangeable. And there's a lot of movies recently that I fucking absolutely love, like. But at the same time, it's like the more unique the voice of the director, the more interested I am in it. Yeah. That's why I love Wes Anderson. That's why I love David Lynch, David Fincher, Kevin Smith, Tarantino. Aronofsky.
Yeah, he's heavy.
He is heavy.
Yeah.
But it's and then every now and then you've got like these. Now that's a movie directors, right? Like Paul Thomas Anderson and Scorsese. But they're Villeneuve. But they're coming more. Well, Villeneuve is like younger.
Not anymore. He's like, I don't know.
But I wouldn't put him like.
He's not an old timer, but he's.
I wouldn't put them with like the.
No, he's like one of the fresh. Yeah.
Which is, I put him like in the generation of maybe creatively, not necessarily in age, with like. Chris Nolan and totally. That crew, which is like the big studio. I don't know. Maybe we should do like some Villeneuve next time.
Dude, I'm super down. Oh yeah, let's do Villeneuve. He's like because he's kind of like a studio director now. I mean, he's doing Dune. He did Blade Runner. He did Arrival.
Arrival, yeah.
So. But Arrival was more of an artistic film, but like a lot of the films that he's doing now, they're very studio films. Yeah. They're like high production, like mass appeal, and. But
still, I would say that Arrival is still kind of studio-y.
Yeah, very much so.
That's the thing about Arrival that's fucking awesome about it. It's that it's so. It's like you give that content, or that, I don't know. Did he write it?
I would assume he did. He just because I'd need to look into it, but just because of that whole like parallel with linguistics and shit, like that's his
thing. Well, coming from like a bilingual city, right? He's like your homeboy.
And like if you
let's see real quick,
like Arrival is like Arrival's kind of like an auteur film with a studio shell. Like it's just got this great like super interesting artistic storyline and like just. Super character driven, and then like, but everything aesthetically about it and everything is like a highly produced studio film.
So I love it. It's based on a story by Ted Chiang.
Okay.
Which I believe is, I'm going to guess Chinese. He's American. But I wouldn't be surprised that... what am I saying? All right. So, Arrival is based on a story that I wouldn't be surprised that he picked it specifically because of what you're talking about, the linguistics. That's something that would appeal to him. And part of like the brilliance or something that you have to account when you're not a writer-director, or specifically for a project, not that you're incapable of doing it, right?
Yeah.
Is that you're going to pick projects that fit your style, that are projects that you want to tell, that you can do well.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the genius.
That's a strength.
Because like it is a big movie, you know, you've got Amy Adams and you've got what's this other guy? Jeremy Renner.
That alien guy.
The alien guy. And I mean, you know, like the alien union's pretty tight on the, you know, if you want to break the...
Sorry, Bert.
So...
The advantages are out of this world.
Oh.
I had to.
So, it is a mainstream movie treated through the lens of an auteur filmmaker, especially if you see what he's made before.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh man, let's watch some Villeneuve next time. There's a couple of his that I didn't watch. I think is it Fahrenheit 9/11? I think that's one of his.
I have no idea.
I might have fucked that one up.
You probably fucked that
one
up.
I fucked a lot of things up. But I think it is...
Incendiaries?
That's what I fucked up. That's the one...
I hear that's like...
It's a very good one.
I
think that's like... I haven't.
Let's watch that, because like I think that's the one that like people are just like... I think that's like one of the... I think that's the first film that put him on the map in America. That's crazy. It's so baffling.
Did you watch Prisoners?
No.
It's really good.
I've only watched his like big, like I've watched everything he's done after Arrival, which is like Arrival, Blade Runner.
Which, I mean, I could talk for a long time about. I love Villeneuve, hated Arrival. Not Arrival, but
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
We've had that conversation.
We have.
Maybe we should save that to the Villeneuve episode.
Yeah, we're going to save it for the Villeneuve episode.
But something, I mean, I think there's an art to being able to manage and juggle in a way the material, what you want to do, the studio.
Yeah, well, I had like a question that I think like we should jam on about like our generation of filmmakers.
All right.
How to... Because, like, it's either you kind of, like, how do you want to get to a career which makes sense, which is, like, you know, gets you work and stuff, given that there's a huge category of, here are the requirements to make a good film, now go ahead and produce the film we're telling you to produce, and you're an average run-of-the-mill filmmaker, or how do you get to the point where you're, like, you direct films that are your unique touch, sort of, as these directors that we've been talking about. It's like... How do you, in the modern filmmaking landscape, get out of the herd to do that? Like, what's the route now? Like, is it still like South by Southwest and Sundance? I mean, and places like that that'll like, you know, it's like, because now they get tons and tons of applications for films. They don't just have random old people going to cinemas and being like, I'm gonna walk out of here and then write an article about them and start a career. You know, it's like how does our generation kind of like find that path? That's what's tough about filmmaking and being a director. It's like they won't teach you that in film school. Like, how do you run your own path? Like, because the people who walked the path before you, the path has shifted since then. Especially in our generation, because like it was this way forever, and then the internet.
Yeah, exactly. And you have the big change in the industry, right? You've got the death of the studio system and New Hollywood. That was the time of the Scorseses, the Paul Thomas Andersons, the Spielbergs, all those kids. That now they're not kids; they're grandpas. But then you have that generation of the people that came to prominence in the 90s, and there's the people that came through the studio way, and then you have the people that came through the indie way.
Yeah, and there's like that indie wave after.
they're kind of like, that's the indie wave.
Yeah.
So that when indie filmmaking became like a main thing.
But still, the industry and the way to consume films and everything was still the same. And it's just there's this indie wave that like the equipment is more accessible and like we can make these films that are more like.
I think that's a key aspect in this conversation, because if you look at the budgets for the movies back then, like you're shooting on film and you're shooting on equipment that's ridiculously expensive. Just the film, buying the film stock, it's so much money. It's so expensive.
That eliminates like a huge amount of competition. Just that
the barrier of entry. That's exactly. Like you need to have this much money to make a movie, and then the fact that it's limited, right? So you cannot go out and shoot and put the camera and do. Fuck it, we'll do it like 20 times if we have to, because you're running out of film stock. And now, I mean, there's people, I don't remember who it was, but there was a director that made a movie on an iPhone. Yeah. And that was the point of it. And it got a limited release.
A fucking gimmick.
I mean, he was it was so gimmicky. I have no idea. I can't remember who it was.
I hope it was garbage.
I don't know. It was gimmicky, but it did prove a point.
Of course.
I mean, if you're a big name director, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
It could be cool if you're doing like some sort of sci-fi thing and you're incorporating cell phone like use in, I don't know, but
the whole thing was like gimmicky. we shot it in a phone. Yeah. Like, but it gets to the point where
talk about it.
Yeah, you don't have the best equipment, but you have equipment. Mm-hmm. And we've had this conversation, right? Like when doing screenings and talking about the movies, you've pointed out. Yeah. What's the first question people ask you at Q&A?
What did you shoot it on? Camera of sorts. Had lenses. And
like being not
but I mean it makes sense.
Cinematographer.
In the beginning, that's what you ask. It makes sense
because you're saying like there. People have like people's movies look like this. My movie looks like shit.
Yeah, for sure. And you want to that makes sense.
It's a concern. Yeah. It's gotten like for me at least in my experience, like I don't even like I had to think about that. I don't remember.
So I think there was something interesting though in that example with a cell phone, because that's kind of what I was starting to get to with like my idea of like, okay, how do you fucking make it? In this generation, high concept. Yeah. I think we're in a generation of high concept. It's like so you can make a film that's got an original story. You can make a film that's aesthetically pleasing. You can make a film that's very universal. Or you can go high concept. Christopher Nolan, for example, like Memento. Mm-hmm. The whole story structure is very high concept. It's just like you're reinventing the way you're telling the story in terms of
chronology. At the same time, it's not high concept in the sense of like, man, it happens in outer space and we've got aliens and we've got...
but then Interstellar was. Right?
Yeah, but like if you're talking about... because you can... I think it's the right... I think it's the right term and the right way that you're putting it. But there's a difference between your plot is high concept or your storytelling in itself is high concept. Right?
Yeah, I think
how are you going to tell the story?
It's like not the... It's not really... The distinction would be it's not necessarily like the story of a large concept. It's more of like a high concept in the sense that like the concept is complex and original. Mm-hmm. Like of the film, like for example, again, Christopher Nolan, because he's like the high concept director. Him and the other one, Inarritu, who I really don't like. Is it Inarritu?
Inarritu did Birdman.
Birdman, yeah.
And
so those are two really high concept directors. So high concept examples. Revenant, shoot in the Canadian wilderness and be an asshole to your whole crew. That's high concept because like, holy shit, you shot a film in the Canadian wilderness for how long? Like, that's crazy. It is. It's crazy. He's an asshole.
You heard it here, probably not first. Yeah, I've heard it before from this mouth
too many times.
It's okay.
And then Christopher Nolan, let's say Inception, high concept. The story within a story within a story within a story, and it's like and how all of that's attached together and the dreams, and so that universe building and everything is very high concept. Same thing, Birdman, all of it in a fake
one shot.
Yeah. So those are high concept films. They get talked about. So I think that's kind of like the way to get out of all the noise is high concept.
Well, and I mean,
I think that's what makes sense now.
And some of them are very doable. Some are,
I
think are that doable. But for example, Birdman.
Yeah.
You can set up a movie like that in an indie budget.
Yeah,
like
it's not,
no problem.
Exactly.
Memento, you can do Memento on a no budget. Yeah. No problem.
Think of even, no budget example of high concept Paranormal Activity.
Oh, fuck. Paranormal Activities...
It's the highest grossing film ever. It's nuts.
Because it was made with 10 grand and it made 100 million, something like that. And it's something that that I keep coming back to it because my friend Misha loves horror. He's working on his first script right now, and it's a horror thing. We've always enjoyed horror movies, and it's always a case study. It's a little bit ridiculous to use it as a case study because it's
it's the best.
The thing is that
to learn there.
But I don't think it's. You can replicate it, but not to the same effect.
No, because they retired.
Perfect.
I mean, the shirt's retired. It's like, all right, Paranormal Activity cannot do a film like that anymore. That's been done.
And you can, I mean, there's a reason why horror gets made the way it gets made because horror is so cheap to produce.
Cheap and dirty.
It's dirty people, and that's the thing. The audience of horror.
Can you say dirty people again? It was really cool how you said it.
Because
it's dirty people,
but it was two different sentences.
I know.
It's
but cheap and dirty. We're talking about
cheap and dirty, but dirty. People.
Yeah.
It's people try to replicate it, but it's not gonna be the same thing because even I went back too much. What I was saying is that. Horror, the people that watch horror are the audience is educated to accept cheap and dirty as a
it's part
competent
of the
movie, right? It's almost like horror is almost B movie-ish. And there's B horror and there's mainstream horror, but you can get away with so much. And I don't say this in any like diminishing way or like putting down horror because I fucking love horror, and. But you can get away with so much because the
genre allows for it.
And a lot of people turn a lot of profit from horror. Maybe you don't see like all the horror makes 100 million like Paranormal Activity, but if you have a horror movie that makes $5 million, but guess what? You shot it with 20 grand. Oof, that's money for everyone.
It's nuts.
And you come to production houses like Blumhouse.
Yeah, I've heard.
Blumhouse makes so many movies, and Blumhouse even makes like direct to streaming movies. And they do like they're prolific because they do a shit ton of movies.
Yeah, they're high volume.
And then, but at the same time, they also did Get Out, and they also did. There's another one that wasn't like a super horror movie. They're producing all levels of content, but the thing is that they are able to turn a profit. So maybe you can say like, hey, I made a movie, it made $5 million, and if you compare that to like mainstream Hollywood, people are gonna be like, your movie made
why'd you waste your time with $5 million?
Yeah, but then you tell them, yeah, I made it with 20 grand.
Yeah.
So
and then they're like, how much percent of ROI is that?
Yeah, and it's like. And the studio is happy, the distributor is happy, you're happy, and they're like, oh, this kid can bring me a return of investment. Probably not. Like, this kid can bring me a return of investment of so much money.
Yeah, and then you're shooting.
And then you're doing like movies. And I think bring it back to the question of like, well, how do you break out in that sense? Eventually, if you're constantly making movie to a production company in that amount, by being very effective with your stories, being very economic filmmaker, and just turning a decent profit, one of them might be a hit. Maybe there's the one that it's not the Paranormal Activity, but maybe they say like, hey, you know what? This kid, I give him $50,000, he brings in $5 million. What happens if I give him $5 million?
Yeah.
And don't fuck up.
Turns out you bring in $20,000.
Yeah. I mean, it happens.
Who would have known? It's inversed.
It happens to people, There's a lot of directors that's how their careers probably end, or then they need to figure something out.
Yeah. Gotta work construction, suck some dick.
A lot of people have flops.
Yeah.
And a lot of good people have flops. And then flops that then become something popular, something good, something that sells.
And then you just recycle yourself and start shooting films like Sharknado and make a ridiculous amount of money while shooting at the beach having fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of directors who do like B films because they're just like, it's super easy. There's like no pressure. And they get a lot of money. It's the same fun process of filmmaking, but there's girls with boobs. They're on the beach. And it's like, and they get to just, it's cool that route exists.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also directors I've probably never heard of that make a great living and they get paid for making movies, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which
we'll figure it out, man. We'll figure it out.
I think that what you mentioned about the high concept storytelling is a very interesting thing.
I think that's where it's at.
I will add style.
Yeah.
And a style that, like, if somebody's like looking at this podcast and saying like, I'm going to take notes, which would be fucking awesome. I would say don't stylize for the sake of just stylizing. Man. Like, have a decent... Like, Tarantino is Tarantino because his style is Tarantino, Kevin Smith's dialogue is Kevin Smith dialogue, and it's a style. But when you're just stylized, there's so many...
I feel like the
film
style...
school...
Yeah, I feel like the style is kind of like born out of like your imperfections at a certain point more than your strength. Well, like a combination of your strengths and imperfections. It's like you kind of like lean into certain things and less to others depending on what you enjoy doing and everything. And it's like you can't be imitating other people's styles or trying to think of your style, or it's just like if you do it enough, you will develop your style. But especially like you got to do it enough, develop your style, but also like push around with it in the beginning, like make some mistakes, do some crazy stuff.
How are you gonna find it if you're not like you're gonna be able to sit down and say like, oh, this is my style. You can sit down and consume content and watch the movies that you love and try to think about them like critically and creatively and as learning from them and say like, hey, you know what? I love Wes Anderson's framings. I love Kevin Smith's like dialogue. I love the high concepts that that Christopher Nolan does. I love the humor in Taika Waititi, and I love
That's a hell of a list.
Yeah, I kind of just I'm just saying like what I love, right? And then I say like, and you know what? I love the quirky horror of Sam Raimi. So it's like, can you imagine if Kevin Smith wrote a film that's being produced by that's being produced by Christopher Nolan, that the cinematographer is Wes Anderson, that is being edited by Taika Waititi, and that is directed by...
It would be an original thing.
That's kind of what we do, right? I think that style is everything we've brought in throughout our lives, and now we're saying it through our own filter.
Yeah.
And the way that you find that, it's like, consume what you love, pass it through you, but then you need to create with everything mixed together through the unique lens that is you. But you're not going to be able to figure that out by just sitting and not doing. Yeah. So the first work that you do is going to be an exploration and an exercise in your style. Yeah.
Yeah, I think your first films kind of have to be shit just to, well, not really, but I mean like they're naturally going to be these, you got to make mistakes and figure out like what you like and what you don't like. And it's also like what works in what you see, and then the way that you try to imitate it or whatever might become different in its own unique thing. And it's like the style thing is like not too recently now, like, but I've started having people saying like, that they recognize my style in my films and stuff, and that's the coolest thing. Recently, I had like, oh, that's your style of cameo. And I was like, oh shit, yes.
You do love your cameos.
Love cameos. I like cameos because of Hitchcock and because of Tarantino.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Tarantino's got some good ones.
Never gonna narrate my own films though, but he's such a.
That is weird.
And I don't like the idea. Like, I don't want to have dialogue in my cameos, or I think that's crazy.
It's just there.
Like, I think Tarantino does dialogue in his because he's like so much of a film buff that he really wants to be the guy saying the poetic line, Yeah.
It's like, well, I think it's just kind of him being like, I have this very weird idea that I just want to say it.
Yeah.
Because then you've got the whole like, what's it in, I think it's in Reservoir Dogs, which is like, the Madonna song and like a virgin and kind of what it really means and all this shit. He's got like that rant about it.
Mm.
And it's him delivering it.
Mm.
And then he has one where he's talking, what was the other one? I don't know, it's like pop culture stuff, but not in a like poppy culture, but it's just like a culture thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one saying it, which I find it weird, but
I love Hitchcock's cameos, because like, for example, in Psycho, he's just driving the car, like he hits the brakes, almost hits, I think it's like the main actress who he kills in the first 15 minutes, which is awesome. And
spoilers for Psycho
in case you haven't seen it. But yeah, it's like his cameo is just very subtle, and if you don't know that it's Hitchcock, then it's just another random person. I think those work best, but still he's a kind of a pivotal. Well, in that film, he's not pivotal, if I'm not mistaken, but he's still like, it's an important moment.
Yeah.
Like,
you wanna, if you're gonna put yourself, I think like, if you're gonna put yourself in the movie, it's either gotta be really funny.
Yeah.
It's gotta be something that's special to you.
Oh yeah.
Or it's gonna be
aliens.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
I think like your Kodak camera.
The what? Oh yeah.
It is my favorite Matt Rich cameo.
I think it's the funniest for sure that I've done. Yeah.
So it's like, in that case, it's like, it's something that's funny, but funny in your style. That's
and
just
anybody else could have done it. So it's like, all right, I'll do it. There you go. That's my cameo.
And
that was actually an homage to Shaun of the Dead, when there's the zombie in the backyard. There's a girl in the backyard. And then they go, and she's like, "Hello, are you okay?" And then they end up like, she jumps him, and then he's like on the ground, and he's like, "Cool." He's like, "Get the shovel, like to hit her or something." And he gets the camera, and he's like, "Tch." And then she gets up, and there's like a hole inside her stomach, and then that's when he just goes. That's so good. That's like, I love that joke. So I got a disposable yellow camera, same style, and I was
nice.
Right,
I didn't know it was that deep of a cameo.
Yeah, it's like,
I just found it ridiculous. Everybody's like, they're like
over the top DSLRs.
I don't want to say too much about this particular project, but yeah, you've got a row of like reporters with like their really nice cameras and everything, and there's you with like your like disposable camera
and my dumbfounded face.
But yeah,
should we end it?
I think we should end it on that conversation. Before we do though, we've got a little bit of a rebranding that's happening now. The name of the podcast now, Bebop Cinema.
Bebop.
Can we record that?
No, we don't have the. We did.
Yeah, but like proper. All right, well, we'll use it. So you can find these now that we're all set up. We can find it on YouTube, version where you see us interact, and you'll get a visual of it. We'll go back, hopefully, when all this shit calms down, to our original studio.
When all of this, we're just gonna go to Winchester and wait for all of this to blow over. So once it all blows over, we'll be back in the good old Studio 5.
Right on. But in the meantime, we'll try to, be safe, and we encourage everybody to be safe. Yeah. Be creative.
I still want to see movies. Like, we should get people to send us movies.
Oh yeah,
like we should get that going. Like, we should literally just take submissions. Do you have a film that's already been online or hasn't? Who cares? Send us the film. And then we can show like a film and then talk about it.
So we've got an Instagram, we've got a YouTube channel, we've got a Facebook page.
Yeah.
So yeah, drop us a comment that says like, hey, what's up? I'm a filmmaker from here. We'll give you a shout out. Drop us a link for your movie.
Yeah.
And we'll check it out. We'll see the short. We'll show the shorts.
Yeah, we'll show the short. We'll talk about it real quick, and then we can like go into our regular shindig.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. We're also on Spotify and on iTunes. Just search it as Bebop Cinema. And we'll keep this show on the road from Winchester.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Get her done. Bebop.